Good morning, Willowbrook. Today we continue in our daily Devo series with Numbers chapter 21. And in the chapters preceding this one, we've seen the Lord affirm and state the roles of priests and Levites before the people, and their mediation will kind of foreshadow that of Christ himself. We've also just seen the death of Moses' sister, Miriam. She was a leading woman of Israel, obviously. So you can imagine how that might have affected the people as they suffered that great loss of leadership among them. And speaking of that, Aaron's death takes place in the previous chapter also. So we've seen a lot happen, a lot of changes happen in the span of just a few chapters here in the book of Numbers. Now, we find Israel in chapter 21 with a battle on their hands. They were defeated at Horma before in chapter 14, but this time around they have victory over them and many others as they approach the Jordan and get ready to enter the land of Canaan. The old ways we see, the old ways of Israel's impatience and complaining crop back up as they continue their trek. And we see that in verse 5 when it says they spoke out against God and Moses, asking, "Why have you brought us out of Egypt, out of slavery, to die in the wilderness?" They complained about lack of water, even though God had already given them water miraculously from rocks. And they complained about the food, even though it had been raining from heaven each night. That's crazy to think about, right? But we too, we're so easily lulled into doubting God's provision for us. We may cast judgment and think about Israel like, oh man, how could they do that? But we need to realize that this is a commentary on our own struggles with our flesh, with our doubts, and our lack of trust of God too. So we see ourselves in the way they've responded. Now, as a result of their sin, God sent fiery serpents among them so that when they bit them, people were dying. So this had to be mind-blowing to watch happen. The people came to Moses and said, we have sinned against you and against God. Please pray, mediate for us so that we can be spared. I think I would have the same mindset too. And then after Moses interceded for them, God told him to make a bronze serpent, set it up on a pole so that anyone who was bitten could look to the bronze serpent and they would survive. What a gracious thing God did there to spare them from that judgment. Looking to the serpent provided salvation from the snakes, as looking to the cross provides salvation for our souls. You see, Jesus compares his own death on the cross to the uplifted serpent when we get to John chapter 3, verses 14 and 15. And that's where Jesus says, "And as Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, that whoever believes in him, whoever looks to him, may have eternal life." What a cool foreshadowing we see of Christ's death. Now, by the time of King Hezekiah of Judah, in about 715 BC, this copper serpent had become an object of worship among the Israelites, and it actually had to be destroyed. You can see that in 2 Kings. Wow. As they continue on their way to Canaan, we see them defeat King Sihon of the Amorites and begin settling in the area called Heshbon. So we begin to see them start to settle here. Then there's another victory over Og, the king of Bashan. Now, before God gave them this particular victory, God said to Moses in verse 34, "Do not fear him, for I have given him into your hand, and all his people, and his land. And you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon." So he's saying, I'm going to give you victory just like I have before. Isn't it refreshing and encouraging and life-giving when God promises you victory and reminds you of past victories? He had provided victory after victory for Israel as long as they continued to keep their eyes on him and look to him for their guidance and for their salvation. May we, as a church, have this same mindset today and every day, looking to Jesus and find our salvation and find our guidance and find our life each and every moment of each and every day. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next time.